What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Friday, January 12th, 2024. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host, Phil. Phil, it feels good to be back on a normal recording schedule. We'll see what transpires next weekend. If the Bills end up winning, we'll figure out what time their game starts. But currently, we're projected to record tonight, Thursday, and this will be out on Friday, and then Sunday night, and that'll be out on Monday. So it feels good. Back-to-back days at least. Actually, it'll be 3 days because the following week will also be a Thursday, Friday release. So 3 straight days of a normal scheduled show.
Yeah, it's kind of weird this time of year with flex games in the NFL, especially with the Bills being one of those teams that people like to watch, I guess. So they get flexed into prime time all the time, which really affects our lives quite a bit, our watching abilities, our schedule, pretty much our show a ton for the Bills. And yeah, thanks a lot, Bills. Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll dive into it because we got a busy show to go over, 1 game to talk about and 2 previews. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com, where you can find Phil's article on Tuesday. Well, every Tuesday, but this last Tuesday he had the breakdown of the Buffalo-Colorado game. And then my power rankings come out every Thursday. You can read those ones, like I said, at buffalosportscollective.com. Just click the articles tab at the top of the screen. It'll take you to all the articles we've ever written. And then look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. We will start with the Buffalo Bills. Like Phil just mentioned, they don't have a primetime game, though, and I absolutely love it. Sunday, 1 o'clock, facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. The weather does not look ideal for this type of matchup when the Steelers are ground and pound, make the other team make mistakes type of team, and Bills have been known this season to give the ball away. And they showed it 3 times last week versus Miami. But Phil, what are your thoughts on the first round of the playoffs, Bills versus Steelers?
I mean, my overall reaction to the entire thing is kind of, if you lose this game, you don't deserve to go on anyway. I know Pittsburgh has been better of late since Mason Rudolph took over at QB.
Which is crazy.
That is pretty insane. In those 3 games, I will go through some stuff. He has 0 turnovers, which is impressive. Only 2 touchdowns, though, to go with those 0 turnovers. He does have a 74.6 completion percentage, so pretty impressive, but he has not completed more than 18 passes in a game. They've scored over 30 points in 2 of the 3 games that he has started. He only has 8 rush yards. I mean, those who know Mason Rudolph even a little bit, you know he's not a rushing threat, but this is another game that you won't have to worry about him escaping, scrambling, anything. Najee Harris in those 3 games is having the best 3-game span, I believe, of the season. He's averaging just over 100 yards and 4.3 a carry in the last 3 games. Jaylen Warren, his running back mate, averaging 44 yards and 4.4 a carry, but most of that came against Seattle when he went 13 for 75 and averaged 5.8 a carry in that one. Other than that, he's been struggling a little bit. Neither are really receiving threats. In the previous 3 games outside their last game, Harris had 0 catches. In the last one, he was 5 for 21. And Warren, in those 3 games, 14 for 70. So, like you mentioned, a huge ground and pound team. They are making it happen with Rudolph at QB. But still, I mean, even with all those numbers I just gave you, I don't know how they scored over 30 points in 2 of those games because they're not throwing much. They're getting some explosive passing plays for sure, but again, he hasn't completed more than 18 passes in a game, which isn't much. And even the ground game is doing pretty good with Najee averaging over 100, but it's not like they're up to 150 or 200 or, just blowing past teams. So overall, their offense seems pretty mediocre, but the big thing is exactly what you mentioned. In this kind of game, they are a run-first team, and they're a team that does not turn the ball over and waits for you to do so, and then they capitalize. And this kind of game with this kind of weather is going to play a little bit more into their hand. I'm not really overly concerned about the Bills, but if there was any way to kind of level the playing field a little bit between the Bills and the Steelers, it's this kind of heavy snow potential going to, it's going to be harder to air it out. It's going to be harder to have a high-flying offense. It's going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle, a little bit more of a run game first kind of battle, and I think that leans just more to the Steelers' strengths than it does the Bills. Not saying that I'm worried about the Bills losing this one overall, but it does level that playing field a little bit more than I think Bills fans would like to admit.
Yeah, I mean, on top of the weather situation, it's not going to be the rain. It wouldn't be the snow. It wouldn't be the cold. It would be that wind. And we saw that being issue versus the Patriots last year in that wind game where, Mac Jones threw it, 3 times? But hopefully they see Josh Allen and his arm and just go, hey, he can still throw the ball. Might not be able to throw any deep shots, which might actually benefit them more because they have not hit very many deep shots whatsoever. But on top of all those things that we just mentioned, the injuries are definitely still stacking up, which I still can't believe because how many more players can possibly get injured? Taylor Rapp did not practice the last 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. Dawson Knox, he'd missed with an illness. Deion Dawkins, he missed with an illness. But more guys, Gabe Davis did not practice. Tyrell Dotson went from a possible limited where it was a conducted walkthrough on Wednesday, but he did not practice on Thursday. Douglas did not practice on Thursday. Deontay Hardy, personal time. Micah Hyde, he was in full, but Ty Johnson was limited with this concussion. And then Taylor Rapp, I believe I already mentioned him, did not practice. So those are big, big injuries to the defensive side of the ball. That's got me a bit nervous, especially the Taylor Rapp one, because once they made that switch to basically have 3 safeties on the field and pushing Jordan Poyer down into the box, that worked out so much better the second half because Miami just couldn't do anything. And if Taylor Rapp's out, if Douglas is out, if Dodson's out, those are 3 not starting because Rapp doesn't. Those are 3 integral pieces on the defensive side of the ball that will be out. And Dodson was already a replacement. Rapp's already a backup. Douglas came in midseason. It's already pieces that you brought in and elevated to starting spots because of the injuries that happened in front of them. So if you keep going down and down and down, yes, the Steelers are not that great of a team, but Mike Tomlin is not going to coach a team that makes mistakes. He's going to be the one that capitalizes on your type of mistakes. So that will be the only way in my mind, and this is coming from a guy who projected them to miss the playoffs, that's the only way that Buffalo is going to lose this game is if it's self-inflicted wounds that they cause themselves. And that's my biggest concern is, Sunday, wind going, Josh Allen tries to go hero ball too much, James Cook puts the ball on the ground, stupid penalties. That the Buffalo Bills are the only way that they're going to lose this game is by themselves.
And speaking of that, so with the last game being as close as it was, and I mean we'll say kind of barely winning again. We went over last time. It was a weird stats game where their offense looked incredible. They just couldn't punch it in, but McDermott was very aggressive in that game. They still barely won. Do you think in this style of game, I mean, I know field goals I'm going to assume are going to be quite difficult, so you might be forced into being very aggressive, but do you think he at all kind of backs off on being aggressive because it almost didn't work in the last game when he was trying to be aggressive? They still barely won toward the end of the game, like especially with playoffs. Do you think he plays it safer in this kind of game? Just get whatever points you can, get out, whatever, anytime they can put points on the board, instead of going for it, he'll just kind of punch in the 3 and hope your defense can hold? Or do you think he will stay really aggressive, despite the matchup, the weather, the Steelers being the kind of team they are without the turnovers and everything? Yeah.
I think it's going to come down to how does his defense perform in the first quarter. I think the first quarter is going to be a big telling tale of how this team is going to be playing. I mean, if it's a grinded out dogfight out there, he's going to play more conservatively and, get the points when he can. And I think that was kind of, I think because they were facing Miami and, Miami is known to score points, he knew that he needed a lot of points and to go for it and try to end the game going for that 4th down call. And that's not me saying that in that situation he shouldn't do it again, because I'm all for, 4th and 1, give the ball to Josh Allen, try to make something happen and pick up that 1st down and end the game right there. And it doesn't matter who your opponent is. I think that's the right decision. But if you're asking me, does the opponent and the environment play a factor into what his thinking is? I think it really comes down to how the teams are playing in the first quarter. If it's a grinded out dogfight, I think he's just going to try to take as many points as he can get. But if it's, Buffalo's rolling, I mean, he might just keep being more aggressive. I hope he's still the gung-ho guy that he's been the last 5 weeks, and I think a lot of it has them going on this 5-game winning streak has a lot to do with Sean McDermott's coaching style and being more aggressive on defense and, picking and choosing when to send the blitz and being more aggressive on fourth downs and all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that's the way he still coaches, but I think the first quarter is really going to be telling how he ends up coaching this game.
Yeah, I feel like if both offenses are struggling a lot in the first quarter, I could see him playing extremely conservative and just kind of whatever points we can get, we'll get. And if we have to punt it, we'll punt it. Their offense isn't doing anything, and our offense isn't doing anything. We don't want to make any mistakes. So it'll be interesting for sure to kind of see how it plays out. But overall, as unfortunate in a way as the weather might end up being as far as leveling the playing field a little bit between these two teams, I do think Buffalo should win and has every opportunity to win this game. I know TJ Watt isn't playing for the Steelers, but like you just mentioned, the entire Bills defense is out. So I understand it's a big loss for the Steelers and a big deal for the Bills, but at the same time, we could just go through the ridiculous list of impactful Bills defensive players that will be out. And I don't think anyone's really talking too much about that because TJ Watt's a current injury versus the Bills, who are missing these players pretty much all year. And like you just mentioned, a few even headed into this week. So interesting matchup. I think it'll be a little bit more scary than I would like, but hopefully, like you said, that offense finds a way really early to continue to pass the ball, come out flying, put up some points. And then I think if you can get ahead early, like in most sports and most games, especially when we talk about the Bandits, we love getting up early. I think if they can get up early in this game, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, the TJ Watt injury that you brought up is massive. Him not playing and it already being confirmed that he's out, and it's not just, hey, he's probably not going to be playing, but he's listed as questionable. Knowing that he's going to be out, that defense is a much different team when TJ Watt is not there. You're not having to worry about, okay, where is he lining up? Who's going to be blocking him? Who's going to have that chip on him?
Right.
The linebackers for them are not great. Minkah Fitzpatrick being back does hurt a bit because he has been known to take the ball away and Josh Allen has been known to give the ball away. But honestly, if they are the Bills of the last 5 weeks where they've been battle tested all year long, this honestly should not be a worrisome game. But this is the Buffalo Bills. And for the last 3 weeks, they've got a 2-point win, a 6-point win, and a 7-point win, and we've had to sweat it out the entire time. So I'm hoping for more of a Dallas Cowboys win than a Chargers win. But, I mean, Buffalo's been known to just make our heart pitter-patter faster and faster at the end of the game. So the spread right now, according to ESPN and all the betting sites, Buffalo plus 10. I would take Pittsburgh in the points if I were you, but that's just me because Buffalo likes to keep these games close. And with the weather being a neutralizer a bit, if they can control the running game and don't let George Pickens get over the top, they should be able to take care of this. I can't see Pittsburgh scoring more than 10 points if they control those two players.
And the big thing is with what you just mentioned about those last 3 games being close games, that they're winning those close games. Yes. Finally. It was something that they've struggled with for a very long time, especially this season. They weren't very good at winning those kind of ugly, gross, close games. And that's all they've really had the last 3 weeks are pretty not very well played, ugly games, but they've come out on top in all 3. And honestly, that's kind of the football you're going to need to play in the playoffs, is that potentially ugly, not the prettiest win, but you get the win. And that's the biggest thing about those last 3 weeks is they haven't been pretty, but they've gotten the win. So we know it's a team that can do it. They have proven it, especially the last 3 weeks, even against some inferior opponents. They're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit more than we would like, but at the same time, they're coming out on top. So just rinse and repeat what you've done the last 5 weeks, find a way to win, and move on.
So there are multiple others games being taken place, and that multiple is 5. It starts Saturday, 4:30, Cleveland versus Houston. Part of me is rooting for Joe Flacco, but the other part of me is I just can't root for Cleveland after everything they did with the Deshaun Watson trade. I just can't. I'm rooting for Houston in that one. Miami versus Kansas City at the late game on Saturday, 8 p.m. We'll be busy watching the Bandits play, but I'll be watching that at halftime and then catching the end of it after the Bandits play. But I'm rooting for Probably Miami. Just have them keep advancing, and then they go to the Ravens. Who knows? I don't really have a strong case on either one of those.
It'd be nice
Green
to
Bay
see Casey out round 1.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. Nice.
But I also want to see Kansas City have to play a road game for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career, and that would be fun. Green Bay versus Dallas after the Bills game, 4:30 on Sunday. Go Green Bay, I guess. I don't like Dallas, so whoop-de-doo. Los Angeles Rams versus Detroit. This one also kind of stinks. I'm rooting for Detroit, but I think Rams are just going to roll them. They get the 8 o'clock game on Sunday. And then Philly versus Tampa Bay Monday night. We get to watch one more Manning cast, 8:15. That one's going to be an ugly game because Philly has stunk recently, and Tampa Bay is the worst team in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. But, Phil, with that in mind, we know who's playing. The Ravens and the 49ers have the byes because they're the number 1 seeds. What is your Super Bowl prediction? You know, we're not running through the playoffs, but at the end of the day,
I was going to ask if you want to. We don't have to go deep. If you want to sprint through a bracket.
Okay, real quick. Cleveland,
we
Houston.
Don't have to go deep
winning?
into it. Like you said, I'd like Houston, but I'm going to go with Cleveland's defense in that one.
I am also going to go Cleveland, but I am rooting for Houston, so Cleveland advances as the number 5 seed. Miami, Kansas City, who you got?
Ugh, gross again. Everyone's healthy for Miami, I assume, in this game going into this one? Are they?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. We're going to go Miami because KC's looked terrible all season.
I am actually going Kansas City. So you got Miami advancing, I got Kansas City. So
we'll go with yours, Kansas City.
Well, Bills versus Steelers. Who you got?
Yeah, Bills.
Okay, so you got Miami advancing. Sorry, I'm trying to write this out.
Yeah, I got a graphic up that I keep staring at. So
okay, so you have Miami versus the Ravens and Cleveland versus the Bills. So who you got there?
Ravens, Bills.
I have Cleveland versus Ravens and Kansas City versus the Bills. So I'll have the same matchup in the AFC. So Ravens versus Bills in the AFC. We'll go over to the NFC real quick. Green Bay versus Dallas. Who you got?
Sadly, Dallas. I like the NFC is so weird to me. Like, what are these teams?
It really is.
What are these teams?
I said it earlier in the year that I think this is a different Dallas team. I also have Dallas winning. So Rams versus Detroit.
So this one we don't have to get super into. Why are you high on the Rams?
They're just rolling. Their offense looks like a completely different animal once everybody's healthy, and they are.
That's fair. I'm going Detroit because I like their defense. I like their offense, even though it's shaky at times, but I think their defense is a little better. Home game for them. We'll see what happens. I'm going Detroit.
So I got the Rams winning that one. I'm rooting for Detroit, but I think the Rams are winning. And then Philly versus Tampa Bay. Who you got?
I guess Philly with their playoff experience. We'll see.
I also have Philly winning that one. So it is the Rams versus the 49ers for me. You have Philly versus the 49ers. And then the other matchup is Dallas versus Philadelphia for me. And then you have Philly versus, I don't know who you have.
Detroit.
It hurts my brain. Dallas versus Detroit. That's it.
There you go. I got Dallas and San Fran advancing.
That's what I also have. So we have the same
Same
matchups.
Final Four.
So we'll go back to the AFC. Both of us have the Ravens versus the Bills. Who you got?
I think that's good. If it comes down to that, I think it'd be one heck of a fun game. First off,
agreed.
Homer me wants to go Bills, but given their insane injuries and everything going on, it would absolutely take some hero ball from Allen and that like a perfection offensive game to keep up, but I'm going to go Baltimore the way they're playing right now, and they've played all season. They are ridiculous and so far unstoppable. So,
yeah, I've also got the Ravens. Before we decided to do the whole run through, I had the Ravens making the Super Bowl, and that's not changing for me. The only thing that would really change is if the Ravens get knocked off by either Miami or whoever else goes in Cleveland or Houston.
Or if they just if they don't play well or something the first two games on their way, then or their one game, then maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, sadly, I just have the Ravens. I have been seeing a lot of people say if the Bills don't win the Super Bowl this year or make it to the Super Bowl this year, when is it going to happen? This is the perfect situation for them. I mean, number 2 seed, the number 1 seed is the Ravens, but I mean, you're facing Cleveland, who's been known to just implode. You got Houston with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach. You got Miami, who's walking wounded, and Kansas City is not the same team anymore. So if you do not make it to the Super Bowl this year, when is it ever going to happen? But we'll go over to the NFC here. You got the 49ers versus Dallas. Who you got?
49ers, same thing as the Ravens. I mean, I know 49ers kind of had that spill for a little bit there, but they are back on track. Their offense, their defense are just elite, and they look really, really good. I think they would be able to win that game.
Well, this is really boring. We went all chalk here, Phil.
That's kind of why I wanted to go through the whole thing a little bit to see if we were different anywhere, because I knew my final 2 were your final 2, and I was like, well, that's boring if we just kind of say that. I also do hate that they're my final 2 because have you seen that whole Super Bowl colors?
Yeah.
It's conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, and then that's exactly how we have it. I was like, oh, that's... So I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, obviously, I hope the Bills are in there. So clearly, I hope that this final Super Bowl does not happen. Bills versus San Fran would be nice, or Bills versus, I don't know, Dallas would be interesting, I guess.
Yeah, we ended
Who
up with
is
the same
America's
Super
team?
Bowl. We ended up with 2 different games, though. You have Miami over Kansas City. I have the Rams over Detroit, and you have vice versa. So, Phil... Ravens versus 49ers rematch of when the lights went out. Who you got winning the Super Bowl?
I do think, sadly, it'd be a really fun one as well. We'll give it to, sadly, what you have. What is it?
49ers.
Mr. Irrelevant. There it is.
Yep, Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy.
Yeah,
Kid's good.
That's who I got as well. I think they're just destined. This is the 49ers are just, besides that 3-week lull they had, they're just a tank and an animal, and
they got everything.
They're coming to meet the Piper though, because eventually Brock Purdy's going to have to get paid. I think this is only his second or third year, so they got a couple more years of that. But Brandon Ayuk's going to have to get paid. You got CMC making a lot of money. Debo's making a lot of money. Eventually it's going to come back to haunt him. But we went chalk. 49ers winning the Super Bowl. Congrats to them, and we don't even have the Bills making the Super Bowl. So. I mean, they made it to the AFC.
Hopefully we are wrong.
Hopefully. We've been wrong before. We've been wrong. We'll be wrong again, and hopefully they were wrong this time. But, big game, Sunday, 1 o'clock. A lot of things are going to be happening, and stay tuned, and we'll cover the game on Monday. So, Phil, we'll move on to the Buffalo Sabres. I decided not to go to this game because of the wind, so I stayed home and didn't want to watch it. Watched the highlights, and they lost 5-2 versus Seattle. Skinner, Tuck were your goal scorers. Levi, 21 of 26 save shots, were 38-26 in favor of Buffalo. Halfway through the season now, Phil, they're on pace for 76 points. Reminder, they missed the playoffs last year, and they had 91. And not good. This is not good whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm just going to straight draw a comparison to a team that I've been enjoying their social media posts, and that is the Kraken. So I'm not really going to talk much about this game. Levi did not look very good. The defense didn't look very good. The offense didn't look very good. They don't look like a very good team, and the better team won. But as far as the Kraken go, 11 games ago, they were 10, 14, and 5, under 500. Very similar situation to the Sabres, not looking very good. One of those things where, 11 games ago, you and I were screaming at this team that they need to go on some kind of streak in order to climb back into it. Now they are on a 7-game win streak, 11-game point streak, the highest in their little franchise's history. They're now 17, 14, and 9, and are now tied for the second wild card spot in the Western Conference. So that kind of just proves, A, it's possible by a different team apparently, but B, that is the kind of run that you have to go on in order to climb back into playoffs. They were under 500, had to go on a 7-game win streak, 11-game point streak, and are now just getting to tied for the second wild card spot in the Western Conference. And now they're 17, 14, and 9. The Sabres have yet to have a 3-game win streak, let alone, they had one 3-game point streak, so they haven't had a 3-game win streak, a 4-game point streak, and it just took the Kraken an 11-game point streak to climb all the way back into the wild card spot, and yet the Sabres continue to bury themselves deeper and deeper and are going to continue to need a bigger and bigger win streak or point streak to climb back into it that they just do not seem like they have in them this year. Dahlin broke another stick in frustration, something he seems to do on pretty much a game-by-game basis now because he's getting upset about something, which is fair. He is one of the players that seems like he absolutely gives it his all every single night, and the team is just not looking good.
Yeah, Levi was not good. I don't know how much longer they can keep him up here and keep going back and forth between Levi and UPL. I personally think he just needs to go back to Rochester and develop more than just the 2-game sample size he got before, which, I mean, he came up and he dominated those 2 games, so I get it keeping him here. But I also said, that small sample size, can you keep him up here after what we saw early in the season? I honestly think he needs to go back to Rochester and just develop more down there, but who knows if that's going to happen. Ryan Johnson, I know he's in the lineup tonight when they're playing on Thursday, which they're up 3-1. Of course they are versus Ottawa, but he was sitting 8 of the last 18 games, and he was out the last 3. Yes, he's back in over Yoki Haru, but if he's not going to play, why is he here? I don't understand the process with them saying, hey, we don't want to block the development of these young guys. But Ryan Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the best 6 you have on this team, and he's not playing. And yes, he played 10 of the 18. That's not good enough. He needs to be in on almost every single one of those 18. If you want to give him a break every once in a while, like they did with Quinn and Krebs and Peterka last year, sit him in the box so you get a different view every once in a while, that's fine. But 8 games out of 18 is not right in my book. He needs to be in the lineup developing, and if he's not, send him back to Rochester to play. But like I mentioned, 41 games through so far. Half the season is over. They're not on a good pace. They've won 2 games in a row twice. It's ugly. So I wanted to look a little bit closer, and we've been saying on this podcast, the stars and the players that were great last year are not performing up to what they were last year. Duh. Two players, Phil, are on pace to beat last year's numbers. Peterka is on pace for 24, 28, and 52 last year, 12, 20, and 32. 20 points more than last year. Great. Middlestad, on pace for 22, 48, and 70-point season. Last year, 15, 44, and 59. Shattered all last year's records. Those are the only 2 players of note that are on pace to at least equal or beat last year's numbers. Now, you're thinking, Skinner, Dahlin, what are they doing? Skinner, he's on pace for 66 points. He was on pace for 80 last year. Dahlin, on pace for 64. He had 73 last year. Tuck, on pace for 58, was 79-point player last year. Tage Thompson, yes, he's been injured, but he's on pace for 50-point season, 94 last year. Dylan Cousins, holy cow, 40-point pace right now, 68 last year. Owen Power, pretty close, 32-point pace, 35 last year. Olafson, 24-point pace, 40 last year. Those numbers are just depressing. It's 2 players are outpacing last year's numbers, and it's not good enough. These numbers right here, I understand there's been injuries, but other teams have injuries as well, and they're able to fight through it. These numbers right here are the exact reason that this team is on pace for 76 points, because their stars that you paid and are supposed to be this core for the future are not getting it done, and these numbers back it up.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. You are sadly correct, and honestly, I'm just I feel like we give this team too much time every single episode.
Yep, I agree. This is enough time for them. I think we gave them about 7 minutes here, and that's 7 minutes too long. And, of course, they're beating Ottawa, and they're probably going to beat them, and then we're going to have to talk about it on the Monday show. Hey, you got to win. Oh, whoop-de-doo. Stack some wins. Like I said, go on a 5, 6, 7-game winning. You just explained what Seattle had to do, and they're still not in a wild card spot. They're this equal with Edmonton.
Yeah, they're tied 4.
Yeah, they're tied 4, but Edmonton has 3 more games in hand.
Right.
So they went on that massive run, and they're still not in a playoff spot right now. That just proves how far back you can drop. And again, only 7 points back, but guess what? It's a lot of teams you got to jump. It's not always about the points. It's about the teams you got to jump. And like I said, talked about this team too much. Let's move on to the Buffalo Bandits before we dive into the preview that we got coming on. About 2.5 hours before we started recording, there was a massive trade that went down. The guy that took up a ton of our time on Tuesday's show and part of your article and part of my article has just been traded. Brad McCulley and the pick that they just got from Rochester, the 2026 third-round pick that was Rochester's, go to Vancouver for a 2024 and a 2026 second-round pick. Phil, I know we were trying to dissect it and give our thoughts in our group chat before this, but then we were like, okay, let's save a little bit for the podcast. What are your thoughts on this deal? And it's a bit shocking to me where it seems to almost come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of your points you're going to make in a few minutes because we did talk about it a little bit. But the biggest point, that's true. The biggest point I have to this one that seems weird to me, and I think a few fans have pointed it out. I mean, I know from our standpoint in general, we are huge fans of Brad McCulley on this show, what he means to the Bandits, what he brings to that left side of the offense, not just in stats and points on the board, which we just talked about in the last show. I think that was his second best game of his career points-wise that he's ever had, but he does all the things that you need someone on that side to do. And like all the picks that he causes, all the lanes he opens up for Cloutier and Byrne. So he does all the little things that you absolutely need. He's a scrappy player. He loves, showing the feisty side if he has to for his team. So we're huge fans of his. He does a very good job for the Bandits. He's a critical part of that left side of the offense. The biggest issue I have with it is that this is a win now team. You are absolutely in a championship window. You're looking for back-to-back championships. You have the team to do it. I know they're 2-2, but there's a recent article about Lax Metrics saying that this team arguably could be, 4-0 essentially, and they've played 3 of the top 5 teams arguably in the league between Albany, Georgia, and San Diego. So they're playing really top talent, and yet they're holding their own quite well. So this team is essentially looking very good early on, despite their 2-2 record. So the weirdest thing to me is that exact fact. Like, Brad is a huge staple to this team and that side of the offense. He's been a integral part of it all last season. When Robinson went down, he was a big part of it so far this season. And you're in a championship window. You don't need the draft picks compared to what Brad brings to the team. So that's the biggest concerning aspect of it to me, is that this is a win now team. You're trading away a talented player who's helping you win right now. So that part's really weird to me. Outside of that, I don't think we've ever had a reason so far to distrust Dietrich and the moves he makes. So I will, kind of sit on it. We'll see what happens. I don't think this is, this kind of move says that the Bandits can't make playoffs or can't win a championship. They absolutely still have the team and the roster to do it. But I did think he was a pretty big part of this team, and I'm surprised in a win now mode, you're willing to make that trade no matter what you're getting in return, unless it was, 2 seconds is pretty fantastic for Brad. I'm not saying it's not a good trade, logistically, but just in the win now mode, I'm surprised you're being willing to ship off talent like that right now.
Before I dive into my thought process for why I think it was done, I agree with everything you said. This is a team that is in win now mode, and that's why we've been saying, anybody that's saying, oh, you got to give Shanahan and Orleman some time to see what you got behind Matt Vince when Matt Vince rings it up. No, not in a championship window. You don't do that kind of stuff. You don't make those boneheaded decisions by, oh, we got to see what we have for the future, when the present is the most important thing for a team like this. So I completely understand Brad McCulley. You could tell the difference in the offense when he is on the field and when he is off the field. And when Kluch and Byrne were out last year, he stepped up into that role and was great and was the best lefty they had in the lineup. And he lived up to that the first round pick pedigree that he had going into, he was a first round pick. So obviously he's got the talent. And I think I said that on the last show. So I understand getting the 2 picks in 2024 and 2026. I get it. It's more ammunition. They got 3 seconds and 3 firsts in next year's draft, I believe.
Which is
I believe they got 3 firsts, 3 seconds. So I get it. And they upgraded in the 2026 round. Cool. Whatever. It makes little sense unless there's stuff going on behind the scenes. I know he's from Victoria, Boston, British Columbia. I get that. But I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on this, I'm pretty sure he's been staying in Buffalo because of all the Instagram stories. He's been teaching and he's been coaching here. He's part of all the off the field stuff that the Buffalo Bandits do with all the Robinsons and so on and so forth. So I'm pretty sure that he's planted his roots in Buffalo as much as we've seen social media wise. So I don't think, and again, don't know any inside information on this one. I don't think he has been living out on the West Coast, but he is from there. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. My feeling in this, and I'm looking at it as a whole, my thought process is one of the defenders is ready to come off the PUP or the IR. That's my thought. Maybe it's Justin Robinson. Maybe it's Zach Belter. Maybe it's Frank Brown. I don't know. Maybe it's one of them, and they needed to clear room. And Brad McCulley is a very similar style player to a Brandon Robinson, and Brandon Robinson has been playing defense. You shift Brandon Robinson up, you take Brad McCulley's spot, you open that roster spot by sending Brad McCulley out, you get 2 second-round picks back in, and you activate whoever is back on defense then. So Clark is still your 8th forward now. He's still your 4th left-handed forward. That would be my guess is what this trade kind of revolves around, is one of those defenders is ready to come back and play. Is it Zach Belter? Is it Justin Robinson back faster than we thought he was going to be? Is it Adam Bonberry, even though I don't think it's him because latest I heard was March? Is it Frank Brown? We saw him practicing in that open practice. Is he finally cleared? So that's my thought process on why this trade all transpired. But I'm still with you where it's a bit puzzling why it's Brad McCulley going out and not a guy like, again, not taking any shots, just why isn't it a guy like Emerson Clark who you just brought in that, you can kind of just release, send him out back into the wild because you traded a retired goalie for him and keep Brad McCulley and there's your roster spot. That's my biggest confusion. So that's why I'm thinking there might be something more that is not known to the public. And like you said, Dietrich, he makes trades all the time that are a bit confusing for me. And then in the end, it's like, that makes sense. So I wouldn't put it past him if this is just one of the dominoes that is ready to fall, because I looked at the transactions for the NLL and nothing's posted for today besides the Calgary move. So they haven't activated anybody yet, so stay tuned for Friday or Saturday. That's my biggest advice and my thought process on Brad McCulley's deal. But it does stink to see him go out the door. He was on our show 2 years ago, I believe it was, for a quick interview, and he was great. I know he's even better off the field. He's seeing all the comments from his teammates. He was very well loved. He was a great teammate on and off the field. So I'm wishing him the best setting lanes for Charlotte Beatties and Martel out in Vancouver. Just don't do it when you're facing Bandits.
Yeah, I think he'll fit in really well to that team.
He's going to be great out there.
We don't have to dive into it too much because it's not our team, but I do think, I think he'll do fantastic in Vancouver. Like you mentioned, if it is something to do with him getting an opportunity to play closer to home, maybe he does want to be closer to home in general. I think that's awesome for him if that's kind of the direction that he could go. In general, though, I think the roster moves you are mentioning make sense to me, where Brandon Robinson would take his spot and then you get a defender back and there's a little bit of shuffle on the Bandits roster. And again, I think the biggest takeaway to this is it's a blow to the Bandits, but at the same time, I don't think it really, I don't know. It's weird to say it doesn't hinder the roster because, I mean, we're talking up Brad McCulley a ton, and he absolutely deserves it and what he means to this team and what he means to that left side. But at the same time, like you said, Brandon Robinson is a similar type player. He's played that role before, and he was playing it before he got injured last year, and that's when Brad McCulley stepped up. So I think Robinson can absolutely step back into that spot, and, we'll see what the offense looks like. I don't think they're going to, skip a beat too much. I think the biggest thing is that it hurts your depth quite a bit in that aspect, in that role, because if Brandon Robinson, who has been injured, I know he's been healthy so far this season, he looks really good on defense, which is weird to say for an offensive player, but if for some reason he gets injured again, you are 100% without that style player that you and I both agree is critical to that left side success. You need that guy to set those lanes, set the picks, and just be that bully for Cloutier and Byrne. They work best when they have that opportunity and that ability to have that player. So if Robinson, for some reason, gets injured down the line this season, which hopefully he can remain healthy, but if he does, I think it takes a huge hit to your depth because I don't think Emerson Clark can jump in and fill that role. So it's a weird move to me simply because you're in win now mode and he's a player that will help you win now. But at the same time, if everyone stays healthy the rest of the year, I don't think it's a gigantic blow, but it's one that I do think hurts their depth for sure. And he was a full-time starter and had a really good start to the season. So it's weird. It's a weird situation where on one hand, I think it hurts the team. On the other hand, I think they're going to be okay. And I don't think that they're all of a sudden not going to make playoffs or anything like that, but it's weird. Weird, I think, is just the best way to put it. I mean, what they got in return, I think, is fair. 2 second-round picks, especially Vancouver looking at a 1-3 start so far. We'll see how their season ends up finishing, but no offense to Brad, I hope they do terrible and the Bandits get a really high second-round pick for them, but I think the picks are nice. I think it's fair compensation for Brad, but at the same time, I would have liked to keep Brad and move maybe Clark off the roster, like you said, if a defender is truly coming back. But just weird. Weird timing, especially coming off his best game of the year, his second best of his entire career. And like you said, you and I both talked about and wrote about him in our most recent articles and what he means to that left side, and now he's gone. So weird to digest, but moving forward, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I just have 2 more things, and I know we can move on. I know he was a big piece of this.
It's a big trade. It's one of the biggest trades they've had in a while, I think, as far as like a staple player. Right.
He's still a depth player, but he was very important and critical to the offense. That's why we're talking so much about it. But my only other thought, I got 2 things. One, Steve Dietrich did this to himself by creating too much talent on this roster. So it's kind of like the Sabres pipeline where you have too many first and second round picks in your pipeline, and they're not all going to make the big league club. So you have to start sending them away. And as I'm saying that,
so you're hoping they don't use the 6 picks in the correct. Next year's draft.
But in the end here, I think this might also come down to, and again, not knowing anything about the whole situation. This might end up just coming down to, hey, we're getting somebody back on the defensive end. Brandon Robinson is going to go back on forwards, and based on what I saw in the first game, it looked like Brad McCulley was getting less time than Brandon Robinson. So maybe Brandon Robinson was ahead of Brad McCulley in the pecking order. Now that you got Emerson Clark there as well, he's going to be your healthy scratch. I don't think they're going to want to. This might have been a case where we know how talented Brad McCulley is. It might be better. It might be beneficial for both sides where, hey, we're getting 2 second-round picks that we can use for trade chips or to use them in the future. And we send Brad McCulley out to where he grew up, out West Coast in Canada, and he gets the opportunity to play. So maybe that is part of it where it's a little bit beneficial to both teams where he was going to not get the opportunity really that he might deserve, quote unquote deserve, where he will get that in Vancouver, where he can step up and be an integral piece in that offense and the way they're trying to build that team. Kurt Malowski's going to absolutely love him, but this might also, it might just be the case where they're sending him to a place where he can thrive. So it honestly just might be that case where Brad McCulley had the value that a player like Emerson Clark might not. They want to give Brad an opportunity to thrive, so they send him out to Vancouver. So that's my other just thoughts. Like I said, we don't know anything about it. We're just kind of throwing ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks. That was my latest thing. So we'll end the conversation there. Good luck to Brad in Vancouver.
March 1st, the Bandits play Vancouver in Vancouver. So
yes, so we'll see him again very shortly. But yeah, good luck to him in Vancouver. He's absolutely going to kill it out there, and excited to see because now that we watch every single game, we're going to see Brad McCulley in the black and gold, if that's what you want to call their jerseys. They are in a very nice uniform. So
are they the team with the sweet lights?
I believe so, yes. Oh. I think that's what we ended up deciding. But we'll dive into our preview now. Bandits versus Knighthawks. Knighthawks coming in 3-1. Buffalo 2-2 on the season. Rochester is first in goals scored. per game at 14.24. Buffalo is down at 9th at 11.25. That did go up a tick when they scored 12 versus Colorado. And then reverse this. Rochester is dead last in goals against at 13.75. Buffalo is tied for fourth best at 10.75. Through the season so far, Rochester started hot 3-0, 14-13 win versus Calgary, 16-14 win in Saskatchewan, 13-11 win versus Vancouver, and then they just lost a couple weeks ago in San Diego, 17-14. So Phil, thoughts early on for the Knighthawks early in the season?
Yeah, I think the most exciting, in a very strange way, thing about this game is that it's a huge test to both teams on the opposite side. Just like you mentioned, Rochester, one of, if not the best offensive team in the league so far. Albany also obviously up there, but they've played 5 games compared to Rochester's 4. So it's a little bit tough to tell who actually has the most goals. Well, you said goals for average, they are number 1. So they look really good on offense. I mean, you just rattled off all the ridiculous amount of goals they've been scoring: 14, 16, 13, and 14. Not having scored under 14 goals in a game so far this season. It's a huge test.
Well, once. They scored 13 versus Vancouver.
Oh, sorry, 13 once. Yeah, you were correct. So not scoring under 13 goals
there you go.
all year is incredible through their first 4 games, and a huge test of the Bandits' defense. So I think that's kind of, in a weird way, exciting for the Bandits defense. I know they've already had to go up against some of the league's best offenses in Albany and Georgia and San Diego. So here's another one that the Bandits have to go through without arguably some of their best defensive talent. So it's another huge test for the defense. But I don't know, as a person who thinks that this team can be another championship team and has that caliber, I kind of love the tests. I don't really like the games where, I mean, I enjoy beating up on a team for sure and just crushing them, but the tests are where you get tested. And I think it's really exciting to watch these games where, you know, can the Bandits hold this team? Like you mentioned, I think it was last episode, the Bandits have had 3 games of 10 or less goals against. Can they do that against this team that's, you know, hasn't scored less than 13 all year? Can they find a way to shut down the Rochester offense? And that gives your defense just that big of a boost league-wide. If you can find a way to keep this team under 10, that would be absolutely incredible. And then on the other side, their goals for, not looking amazing, but the opportunities and the way this offense is rolling, they are looking really, really good. They just have not been able to bury their one-on-one chances. But again, like you mentioned, Rochester is the worst goals against average. Their defense and their goaltending have been suspect so far to start the season. So it's a great time for the Bandits offense to try to figure it out, unload, and have a big game. So it's a great test for their offense and their defense, and I love these styles of games.
So we'll just go over last year's, because I've been trying to do this for teams that you see at least 3 or more games against last year to kind of see what, and remind us what it looked like last year. 15-12 loss and a win for Rochester in Rochester. So the home team won all 3 of these matchups. Buffalo won in Buffalo 13-10. And then in the playoffs, 20-8 Buffalo win round 1 of the playoffs. Some notes here. Fields in those 3 games, 7, 13, and 20, 42 shots on goal and 26 loose balls. Smith, 9, 10, and 19, 19 loose balls, 33 shots on net, and 1 caused turnovers. And Matt Gilray, 1, 2, and 3, 26 loose balls, 4 caused turnovers, 4 shots on net. He is going to be very integral, and we'll go over his numbers in just a second. But Hutchcraft only played in 2 of the games, 8 saves, 13 shots against, in relief of Rylan Hartley when he got pulled in the 13-10 win and the playoff game as well. But for Buffalo, Nanacoke, 3, 6, and 9. Kluch did not play in games 1 and 2. Frazier did not play in games 1 and 2. And Byrne did not play in games 2. So McKay stepped up, 4, 7, and 11, 28 loose balls, 3 caused turnovers. Kluch, 3, 4, and 7, 9 shots on goal. Like I said, games 1 and 2 he did not play. McCulley, RIP, he had 8 points in this series last year. But Weiss, 24 loose balls, 9 caused turnovers against this team with 3 assists. Byrne in those 2 games, he did play 8, 9, and 17, 26 shots on net and 13 loose balls. Priolo, 2, 4, and 6, 29 loose balls and 4 caused turnovers. Buchanan, 3, 6, and 9. Smith, 11, 14, and 25. Remember, he was the pretty much lone soldier in game 2. 11, 14, and 25, 30 shots on net, 10 loose balls, 3 caused turnovers. Vance, 137 saves, 32 goals against. So that's an 81 save percentage and a 10.67 goals against. So for Buffalo, Weiss likes playing against him. Priolo likes playing against him. Smith likes playing against him. And Matt Vince really likes playing against him.
Which is good because that is who you want to do really well in this game. I mean, Vince, I don't know. I feel like the chatter about the defense and Vince and everybody has been pretty calm recently. I know once he has one bad game, it will roar back up. But I feel like recently it's been really good. Like you mentioned, 3 straight games under 10 goals. So not really much you can say about Vince or the defense in a negative way, even with their kind of patchwork defense that's pretty injured right now. Once they get their starters back, I mean, some possibly as late as March, but once they get those guys slowly coming back, I think they're going to look better and better. But Vince, it's going to be a huge test for him and this defense, like I just mentioned, with them, the Rochester scoring the highest goals per game. So it'll be a huge one for him to step up in. So we will see kind of what that looks like. But I mean, their offense is going to be lethal, but the Bandits can probably hang with them.
So we'll go over the players to watch now. This is a weird forward group because they're so righty heavy. We'll go over the lefties. Connor Fields, number 10. Y'all know him. Dan Lomas, number 61. And then Turner Evans is number 5, but he is currently hurt. He's currently on the IR, so we'll have to figure out when the injury report comes out if he has a chance to play. And then the righties. Buckle up. There's a lot of them. Austin Hazen, number 18. Ryan Lanchberry, number 7. Thomas McConvey, number 12. Ryan Smith, number 43, and Kyle Waters, number 42. So like I said, they're very, very righty heavy, but that just means that you can't forget about the lefty and Connor Fields.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that stands out is Fields, and I am not looking forward to hearing everybody mention that we shouldn't have lost him, blah, 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 blah. They didn't win a championship with him for a reason. They won it when, I believe, Brad McCulley was on the team, looking great as a lefty who took over Connor Fields' spot. And then they won the championship. So nice job, Brad. Glad you could win a championship with the Bandits. Connor, you're really good, but not for this team. But he's obviously the one on, like you mentioned, the left side that you really have to keep an eye on. But he is averaging 16 shots a game. He is, I think, number 2 in the league at shots for the entire season. He is also 3rd in the league in goals. So he likes to shoot. He's doing a pretty good job at it, but he shoots a whole heck of a lot. So that left side, I mean, he's really the only one you have to lock down in the left side. So if they find a way to pull a Solver-type player on him, Justin Martin, those lockdown defenders, just get him one-on-one and see what they can do against him. A lot of his goals that I was watching were from, at least in the last couple of games, were from out far. They weren't really the in-tight kind of dive across the crease, which we've seen him do in the past. He's been shooting a little bit more mid-range or far-range shots. So something that's kind of interesting to keep an eye on that I think you kind of have to watch him is like at the end of the shot clock or something like that, he likes to still whip it, and he's been able to find success while doing that. So it's a player that you can't ever give up on. Like, don't let him inside, obviously, but at the same time, you have to have your stick on his stick when he is, you know, in those farther ranges because he likes to shoot and he's doing a good job of it. But the righties are the ones you really want to keep an eye on more than anything other than Fields. Ryan Smith, one of your favorite players, is looking really good so far.
He's got a hat trick in every game so far.
Yeah, he's good. He's pretty good. And again, from what I noticed, from what I watched, he is the one that likes to sneak inside. He will catch those in tight passes that are whipped at him really close, and then he buries inside goals a lot. So he's a little bit bigger of a forward. He's not one that's going to shoot far out too often, but he does an incredible job getting inside, finding those seams, and then burying the ball. So he's one that you absolutely have to body up, keep an eye on, because he loves getting inside, and he's really good at finishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head on this one. I almost said nose on the head, nose on the face.
You don't want to hit the nose on the head.
Yeah, you don't want to hit the nose. But I think this is a Dalton Solver game. And if Dalton Solver is able to lock down Connor Fields, I think you're going to be able to more shadow the righties and keep a better eye on them. Because like you said, if you focus too hard on the righties, you forget Connor Fields on the other side. If you focus too hard on Connor Fields, the righties are going to kill you. So if Solver is able to kind of lock down the play of Connor Fields, similar to what you saw versus Georgia, similar to what you saw versus Colorado, similar to what you saw versus San Diego. If you're able to see them lock down a player like Connor Fields and not let him, he's still going to get points. He's probably going to get 3, 4, 5 points guaranteed at the bare minimum, because that's just what he does. The offense runs through Connor Fields. So you can only hope to contain what he's able to do. But if you're able to disrupt his play, you're able to affect the whole offense. So I think the Dalton Solver mention is major in this one. And then Lanchbury has kind of come on strong, and McConvey has been very good as a rookie year as well. But we'll move over to the defense in the transition game. Like I said, Matt Gilroy, he's putting his name on the map. He's early front runner for transition player of the year. 4-4-8, 41 loose balls, 9 caused turnovers. Rylan Reese is right behind him, number 17. Mitch Ogilvie coming out of the back end. He's got 3 goals, 24 loose balls, and 5 caused turnovers. But the man in the faceoff dot, Joe Post, 61%. So good luck, Ian McKay. I know you held strong versus Trevor Baptiste in the San Diego game. You were really good versus Thompson in the Georgia game. And then last week you held your own versus Tim Edwards. So I wish you luck versus Joe Post.
Yeah, I wonder, honestly, if McKay is just getting better.
He is. I think he's settling in.
I don't wonder. He is settling in, like you just mentioned, but I don't think it's his first chosen role. I think in the post-game interview a few games ago that we got to watch, he was
reluctantly happy.
Yes, he was asked to step into that role. I don't think he is necessarily thrilled with that, but he is taking it for the team, and he's doing a really good job. And I know he's been asking Adler for, kind of assistance on how to beat these guys and what to do better, what he could do better. And I think he's looked better and better each week. I'm not saying he's ever going to be one of these incredible faceoff guys. That's not what he's out there to do. That's not what he is meant to do. But if he can continue to do what he is doing, which is winning occasionally, and then other than that, making it very uncomfortable for these other faceoff guys to try to win, he's making sure that they don't win it cleanly. And honestly, for the Bandits, that is all you're really hoping for right now from your faceoff guy, and I think he's doing a great job of it. But you mentioned their transition game. In the last 2 games, from what I could tell, they got 3 transition against the Warriors, 2 transition against San Diego, 5 transition goals in the last 2 games. I know they score a lot of goals, so 5 of their last whatever that is. I don't feel like adding it up real quick, but we'll say almost 30 goals is not a huge percentage, but they have the ability to have transition goals, and they're very good at it. So it is absolutely something that the Bandits are going to have to keep an eye on.
So in net will be Riley Hutchcraft. It'll be his 3rd start, his 5th game. He's 2-1, 12.45 goals against, and 76 save percentage. This is a man who is kind of had to take over that role for Rylan Hartley, who did get hurt in the Vancouver game with a concussion, so they're relying on him to be the go-to man. They relied on him versus he came in relief in the first game from Rylan Hartley, dominated. Then it was the Saskatchewan game, allowed 14 goals, bit rough. Then he was back on the bench, but had to come in relief in Vancouver's game, dominated. Then he had to go back in for San Diego and struggled. So yes, the 2 games where he got the bulk and the full game was against 2 of the best offenses in the league in San Diego and Saskatchewan. But it just seems like he plays differently when he has to go the full 60 than when he is coming in cold and in relief. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to a Buffalo Bandits offense when he is in between the pipes for the full game.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I noticed with him in the San Diego game, this was kind of for both offenses, but especially San Diego. I mean, both teams, San Diego I had scoring 10 in-tight goals. Rochester scored 9, so for both of them, that's a lot of in-tight goals. But the biggest thing to me when a goalie is allowing those, it's more on the defense. Anytime a team or players can get in tight on a goalie, I don't really expect the goalie to make those saves. So to me, if you're allowing a lot of those goals, it's more in your defense allowing the team to get into those dirty areas and have those opportunities. I don't expect the goalies to be making a ton of those saves. It's the other ones. And against San Diego, there was 3 mid-range goals, 4 far goals. Those are the ones that are more typically expected of the goalie to save. So it's kind of weird. He's got a little bit of, some of those other goals where your mid-range and far goals. He allowed 7 in that game, so that's not nothing. You should be able to sneak a few past him from that distance, but more than anything, what they did against San Diego kind of tells me that their defense is struggling to find ways to keep players away from their crease and away from really good one-on-one opportunities against Hutchcraft. And I don't think that's really fair to Hutchcraft to, kind of take that much away from him, allowing 17 goals when 10 of them were right in his face. And in lacrosse, those goals are very hard to save. So I think it's more telling about the defense more than anything, but he does allow a few. 7 goals were from outside of that range. So he does allow, some goals from a little bit farther out, and you will have those opportunities for Josh Byrne to just wind up fire and bury some. But if they can find a way to consistently get inside against him, I think he struggles against those in-tight goals like most goalies do, unless you're one of the elites. So this could be a good game for the Bandits to continue what they've been doing and finding success with all season long, even if their numbers necessarily haven't shown it. I think that if they continue to play offense like they have been, they will find their ways inside, and that's a good way to beat them. So the offense, from my standpoint, against this kind of goalie, just continue to do what you've done all year, and you should be able to have success.
So with that said, Phil, give me that prediction.
I'm going to say it's going to be the lowest scoring game for Rochester because I love the Bandits' defense and the way they're playing right now, but I'm still going to give them 11. But I do think the Bandits' offense, coming off that last game, rolling a little bit more. I think they're going to continue it. I'm going 14-11.
Well, if you've seen our BSC picks that we put out every Wednesday, you know that both of us had Buffalo. Actually, all three of us had Buffalo winning, but you don't know what we're predicting them to win. I got it being a little bit closer, and I got them scoring just a few more goals in this one overall. I got Buffalo winning 15-13. I think this is a game where, we went over that. Buffalo has been getting the opportunities. They just haven't been cashing it in. I think this is a game where you can cash those in. So I got them winning 15-13.
I like it. I just don't want Rochester to get 13 again.
That's fair. That's fair. I understand that. So
9 would be fantastic.
We will move on to the milestone part of this show. It's called the fastest milestone minute. I'm going to try to read these a little bit slower, but they're still going to be quicker. Like I said, though, all of these possible milestones can be found on X at Buffalo Sports Co. We post them on the lead up to all the games. So if you miss one and you don't want to listen back, you can check there for all of them. Here we go. If Matt Vince plays on Saturday, he will tie Derek Sundins for 4th place in NLL history with 274 games. Matt Vince is 1 win away from 150 for his career, which is already an NLL record. He is also 21 minutes away from 15,000 for his career, which is already an NLL record. Shocker, he's pretty good. Chris Cloutier, 6 points away from 200 for his NLL career. He averages 3.47 a game. Tehoka Nanticoke is 1 point away from 100 for his career. He averages 2.83 a game. Chris Cloutier is 6 shots away from 400 for his career. He averages 7.04 a game. If Nick Weeks plays on Saturday, he will tie Chris White for 8th place in Buffalo Bandits history with 116. Chase Frazier is 2 goals away from tying Roger Weiss for 8th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages 1.7 a game. Josh Byrne is 3 assists away from tying Rich Kilgore for 4th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages 2.93 a game. And the last one, Dane Smith, is 6 points away from tying Mark Stainhouse for 2nd place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages 5.92 a game.
I feel so bad for Josh. Yeah, I feel like his milestones and everything he does is always overshadowed just a little bit because he's got Dane Smith on his team. 3 assists away from tying 4th in Bandits history for a player like that is absolutely insane. And then, you got Dane Smith 6 points away for just being 2nd in Bandits history in points, which is that much bigger. So it's a little depressing that Dane casts a pretty big shadow, but Josh is right behind him in so many things, and I feel like he deserves more credit than he gets. I feel like he gets a lot of credit for sure, but man, Dane's just got a real large shadow over there with his 6 points away from possibly being 2nd in Bandits history.
So a lot of big milestones that could be happening on Saturday night. So stay tuned. Like I said, Buffalo Sports Co. if you want to see those once again. But we'll look around lacrosse. Like we said, BSC picks go out on every Wednesday. So you can see I'm 1 game behind Pat for the lead, and Phil's somewhere back there. He's dragging his little legs behind. But we got a bunch of games going in action on Friday. Toronto heads to Halifax, and San Diego heads to Las Vegas. And then on Saturday, Saskatchewan is facing Philadelphia. Panther City is in New York. Albany versus Georgia. Can't wait for that game. San Diego gets another game less than 24 hours later in Colorado. And then the rematch of Kurt Malowski going back to his old town, Calgary versus Vancouver. Phil, any thoughts on those matchups? Any ones that you're excited about?
I'm going to throw it right back at you because there's 3 massive games that I can see, and I want you to pick your game of the week. There's 3 big ones I have listed as the top 3 games, but I want to know what your game of the week would be for this week.
Well, I think the 3 big games are Toronto and Halifax, Albany and Georgia, and San Diego and Colorado.
Oh, Calgary, Vancouver is my other big one, but
okay, that's
not standings wise, but you know.
Yeah, the drama behind it.
The drama.
But my game of the week, I already mentioned it. It's Albany and Georgia. I have been a little bit slow to dive full into Albany. I'm still not fully in, but I'm in the pool. I'm just not in the deep end yet.
You're in the waiting pool first?
I'm in the waiting pool. 1, because I can't swim. 2, because I'm not fully in it. But that's going to be a very, very interesting game because Georgia has been on a roll. Brett Dobson has been unbelievable. Can he be the one that stifles this Albany offense? Because even though Albany's offense is great, their defense and the goaltending they're getting from Doug Jamieson is unbelievable. And if you want to read my power rankings, Albany is as close to number 1 as you could possibly get. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge there where they're ranked. But I got these 2, 2, and 3 in my rankings. So that's my game of the week. Toronto and Halifax is a big one too, but Halifax seems to be on the downward spiral, and Toronto is just 3-0, and this is only their 4th game in 7 weeks. But I'm very interested to watch that Albany Georgia game. The only thing that's annoying is it's the same time as Buffalo and Rochester.
I feel like in a weird way, simply because one's undefeated and one's not, you're kind of cheering for Georgia a little bit just to finally get.
Somebody's got to break the streak.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but I mean, if you hope that the Bandits can,
that's true, catch up.
They're 2-2, so it's not like they're that far behind. I mean, if you get Georgia at 5-1 and Albany at 5-1, then the Bandits, yes, they'd have to get 2 more wins if they win this week, but you're right back in it as far as trying to be number 1 overall. But it's also
you'd actually have to get 3 because they're game back because of the head-to-head.
That's true. I mean, it's ridiculously early to be talking about that kind of stuff. But in general, just, I mean, if we could see Albany and Toronto lose, that'd be huge. To have no more undefeated teams, that'd be a good time. But yeah, I think Albany and Georgia is going to be a lot of fun. 2, for sure, surprise teams as far as where they are and how well they're performing so far this year. I mean, Albany 5-0 is pretty crazy, but it's not just, even for Georgia, it's not the fact that they're 5-0, they're not the fact that they're 4-1, but it's how they're doing it, how they look doing it. They both look pretty legit. So very shocking, I think, as far as the 2 teams. Other than that, I mean, right below them in standings, you got, I mean, Toronto's right there, Rochester, San Diego, Halifax, Buffalo. I mean, those are all the teams you expect to be right there. Those are all your kind of heavy hitters in the league. So out of the kind of top of the standings there, Albany and Georgia definitely stand out, and now they're going head-to-head. It's going to be a big game for them.
So, full 8-game slate for the NLL. Phil, is there anything else you want to add to this show before we shut it down? Because I know we went a little bit long, but I think that's due to the trade that Buffalo made with Brad McCulley.
Out of absolutely nowhere. Go Bills. Go Bandits. Sabres. Yeah. Do something.
Keep trying. They're still up 3-1 as we're recording right now. So, 4-1. Congrats, Buffalo. They're going to blow the doors off Ottawa. Watch this. But yeah, on our next show on Monday, we're back to Monday. Buffalo versus Steelers. We'll talk about that one. Any Sabres games, like I said, they're facing Ottawa right now, 4-1 at 8:30 at night, which we're recording on Thursday. And then we'll talk about the Bandits versus Rochester. So let's busy weekend. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com, where once again Phil's article drops every Tuesday after the Bills or Bandits game. Almost made a full episode again, Phil. But he broke down the Colorado versus Buffalo game, and then my Week 7 power rankings are also there every Thursday. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us that review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.